All right, we got it right this time.
Oh,
That'll work. That one will just be lost into the abyss forever. Let me do this real quick. Check, check. That seems to be good. Let's see. That's probably good.
Post it out.
All right. I'm pretty sure we're live now. Let me just double check. Yeah, it says we're live. I'm just going to delete this one. All right, so this time, I should have said this before. After the debate, we will have a poll up. I don't know how many people will actually vote, but for those of you who watch this later on or even live now, we will have a poll afterwards. I usually go and debate on Dart's page. Michael Jordan fans are the best, but he's out of town for a while, and this isn't exactly basketball related, so we thought we'd just do it on my channel, which is all the same. But yeah, I think that's good. I don't really know what else to say. We were talking before we went live this time. I fucked up the live stream. That's my bad. But essentially, I'm an Aggie. Ian's a Longhorn. You guys know that if you've watched some of our older videos. And I have the hot take. I'm in the minority that I think Manziel is a better college quarterback than Vince Young is. And I honestly, I said this earlier, I don't even think it's close. That's how confident I am. And I understand I'm going on an uphill battle here, and people think I'm crazy for taking this stance, and that's fine. They can think whatever they want. But that's just my opening. That's what the debate's about. And then if Ian wants to say anything before we start.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I applaud you for taking the stance that most people think is crazy. I really don't even think it's close. I apologize if I was looking at my phone. I was tweeting out
That's all right.
the new links to the masses. So we're going to do, what, 4-minute rounds?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to get a timer up on screen, but I honestly was like researching and getting ready more than I wanted to look up how to do that.
Yeah,
so we can do that if you want. Maybe we just do a couple rounds and then because like we're friends. We can be cordial. We're not going to like step over each other and shit. And the last time we argued the A&M leaving Big 12, that was pretty good. But yeah, we can do, I obviously have, I like to go first. I have my intro or two ready and I have my points ready. So we can maybe do like a couple rounds at least and then we'll see where it goes. But
you just, you let me know when you're done.
Okay.
Ranting.
I got my phone right here. Maybe, I think it'll go off whenever it's ready. So I'll just go ahead and start now. Ladies and gentlemen of the chat, friends, family, the jury, the judge, whoever you may be, I am taking the stance. I'm in the minority, and I know this is a crazy stance to most, but I don't think it is once you give me your time and your attention, that I think Johnny Manziel is clearly a better college quarterback than Vince Young. And before we start, I want to set the table, as I do so well, and I want everyone to clear their minds of what they think about Manziel and Vince Young, right? And the reason I say that is everyone has the iconic moment of Vince Young in their head playing USC. He had an amazing game against USC, and that's largely, I would say over 90% of why people think Vince Young is a better quarterback than Johnny Manziel. For that iconic moment in the Rose Bowl and beating the USC Trojans. Well-deserved. I applaud him. It was a great game. He deserves all the credit for that. But taking that aside, if you remove that moment out of your head and we simply just look at who played the position of quarterback the best, it is not even close. It is not even close statistically, rushing, passing, completion percentage, winning the Heisman, who they beat, etc. It is not even close what Manziel did with less talent, by the way, and had higher heights than what Vince Young got, minus that one game. And again, don't get me wrong, it was an amazing game. But if people, to make this debate fair, right? I'm the one, I know I'm in the minority going uphill. Just clear your minds and let's just start from scratch. Let's go back and let's just look at what they accomplished, right? Let's start with a clean slate, right? Let's remove the '05 Rose Bowl game and let's just look at what the players accomplished, correct? And I want to first set this up by going back to 2003 to 2005. We're going to talk about what they did in terms of statistical accomplishments as quarterbacks. And for those who don't believe me, Manziel wins every single category as a quarterback. It's not even close. It really isn't. On paper, everything he did, his highs, his averages, they're all better. I can go into that later, but I'm just going to put that out there. Let's also not forget the fact, right? The '05 Rose Bowl, in terms of what UT did, whenever we give credit to Vince Young for that, was a team accomplishment. That was the '05 Longhorns beating the '05 Trojans. Remember, we are arguing player versus player here. And for those who don't remember, right, A&M, up until Manziel got there, was second fiddle to Texas. Vince Young was coming off recruiting classes that were like number 1, number 10, number 15. He had like 24 NFL players on that roster in '05. Manziel came into an A&M team who had recruiting classes before he got there, the year before he got there, and then everything else, right? 17, 27, and number 15. I just want to set the table for what Manziel had and what he accomplished, and he had a tougher strength of schedule both the years he was in the league than the 3 years that Vince Young did. So he beat tougher competition, achieved more with less, and essentially if we remove that, the iconic game of the '05 Rose Bowl, one of the best games ever, right? One of the best games ever, no doubt. If we remove that and we simply start from scratch and we look at it, Manziel is going to be proven to be easily the better college quarterback. Ian, you have the floor.
Let me get my timer out here. Thank you, Nick. So the first thing I want to say is college football is about one thing, wins. And that's what I want people to remember throughout this debate. It's the only thing that matters in college football. In college football, you have 1 or 2 losses. It might derail your entire season. No title hopes that year, all right? And then when we talk about greatness, we talk about championships, all right? We don't talk about stats. We don't talk about what we did in the regular season. It's championships, all right? And to be considered great, you have to win. They go hand in hand. That's going to be my main talking point here. So, Nick, would you take Peyton Manning or Tom Brady?
As a college quarterback?
Pros, college. Not college, pros.
I think it could be said Manning is the better quarterback. Brady did win more. Right. I would take Brady, but
he's considered the GOAT for a reason. You would probably say Manning, like you said, better passer, right? You probably would agree he can throw the ball, spin the pigskin a little better. But Tom Brady, he's a winner. There's a reason he's the GOAT. And, you know, you've been calling yourself the GOAT of debates. You've won some debates where you debated MJ's the GOAT over LeBron. And you mentioned in those debates about peaks of a player, all right? They go a long way in determining which player is greater than another, which players reached a higher level of success. Vince Young's peak is a game-winning play in the greatest college football game of all time, possibly the greatest sporting event of all time. He is what people remember from that game. You don't remember his teammates. For as good of a team you say that the Longhorns were, nobody remembers any highlight from any Longhorn in that game other than Vince Young. All right, and what was Manziel's peak? Beating Duke in the Chick-fil-A Bowl? Come on. Alabama in the regular season win. BY in his 3 years, all right, it's consistent dominance here. In 3 years, you get one championship, one Big 12 championship. You get another season where you end in the top 5. Manziel didn't get you anything. What did he get the Aggie fans? I don't think you would say, give me a quarterback who beats Alabama in the regular season, who puts up big numbers, kind of a flash in the pan. And then, yeah, so we're talking about, you know, dominance here. And Vince Young dominated. No team beat Vince Young more than one time. And only 2 teams even got a win when Vince Young was a starter. Think about that. 2. And I think, winning, we would all agree, is a defining metric when it comes to greatness. And these are similar standards, I think, that you've laid out when you were defining, who is the GOAT, LeBron or MJ, right? And you can't say Manziel is greater than VY if he never won a championship, but then say championships matter when it pertains to other players and other debates. So, like I said, Manziel was a flash. He put up numbers, but that doesn't make someone great. To be great in college football, you have to elevate your team. You have to win at an elite clip, and you have to have those legendary big moments. And you mentioned that, yes, it's the big moment. Everyone's going to talk about it. But the thing about iconic moments is you have to get to that moment. And you get there by winning. You're not collapsing. You're leading your team. And that's what VY did. He won at an elite clip. And you mentioned stats, right? You said that Manziel wins in all stats. Well, not one. Vince Young was 30-2 as a starter, all right? And if we take out non-Power 5 teams, I believe he was 26-2 as a starter. Well, Manziel was, let's see what we got here. He was 20-6 as a starter, but 8 of those were against teams outside the Power 5, all right? So 12-6 against real football teams. And I'll leave it there. My time is up.
So I think it's rich that you bring up teams outside the Power 5, right? Longhorns also played a bunch of teams that weren't that good or outside of the Big 12 as well, or outside of the Power 5, or teams that just weren't that good in general. I think that's kind of a weak argument. Second, talking about the MJ GOAT debate in basketball, right? I've made this argument before. Basketball, we're talking about being one of 10 guys on the floor, right? In football, you are one of 22 players if we don't bring up special teams, essentially. Again, there is much more that has to be put around a player in football for them to succeed. That, and also, along with Jordan winning, he also had the stats to back it up, right? This is why Robert Horry is not considered one of the greatest ever just because he has a bunch of rings and he won a lot. This is the ultimate difference when we're talking about football in a sport like baseball, right? The ultimate analytic sport is because there are so many things outside of your control that you can't have a hand in that make stats and analytics more important, right? In basketball, you have such a greater effect as a single player that's why it's a little bit of more of a gray area in terms of winning and accomplishments. But Jordan had both, right? And so in this argument, Manziel does not have the stats. Young does not have the stats over Manziel. Not even close. In fact, there's such a disparity in stats. I still haven't gotten to them because we're just going to keep going with this. There is such a disparity in stats between Manziel and Young. It's almost embarrassing, to be honest with you. And you also brought up the whole Brady and Manning thing. Well, Manning did win 4 MVPs, and I'm pretty sure that, we're talking about 2 of the greatest who are probably separated by a cunt hair overall, right? And lastly, you kind of fell for my trap a little bit here. The number one thing that you said VY has over Manziel, right, is winning. And was it so much VY, or was it so much his competition and the team around him, right? Again, VY had better talent around him, better recruiting, better team rankings all over the field. Manziel didn't have that and played tougher competition. So, again, also we're talking about college recruiting, and we don't have like a salary cap on teams to make them even. We're talking about college sports where the talent can be so lopsided, right? Again, in 2013, Manziel was on a team that had 14 NFL players go to the draft. VY had 24, 26, something like that. So again, when we talk about this winning, you're bringing up team accomplishments with the Longhorns. And don't get me wrong, VY had a part in that. VY was the driver of that. But for those who don't know, in 2005, you guys had a top 5 to 10 defense. You guys had the best running game in the country. You had Jamal Charles averaging like 10, 11 yards a carry or whatever it was. You guys had studs all over the field, and that's why I kind of brought up the recruiting classes. A&M, before Manziel got there, was second tier, maybe middle second tier, like not even top second tier. He put A&M on the map. There is something to be said about Vince Young, who comes into a historic program like Texas. Not saying that A&M isn't historic either, just don't have quite the accolades and things that UT does historically. And we're talking about UT, who gets top 10 in the recruiting class every year. They are loaded with talent at that point compared to what A&M had and what Manziel walked into. Vince Young is still one of the greatest recruits of all time. He's like a top 10 recruit. Manziel was a 3-star. That's the kind of talent that A&M was getting compared to Texas, right? So that's what I'm saying. When we throw out the team accomplishments, because it is so hard to just say that VY was the main thing. And if you simply substitute Manziel's stats in for VY, they beat USC by 3 touchdowns from what it looks like to me. And so that's already 4 minutes. But I just wanted to rebuttal what you said there and add on a little bit to what I had said earlier.
All right. So one thing you mentioned, though, was that you said the Longhorns also played a lot of cupcakes. The Longhorns only played in the 2 years that Vince Young was a starter. He was a starter late into his freshman year, but 2004, 2005, they only played 4 teams not in the Power 5. Manziel got 8 wins against SMU, South Carolina State, Louisiana Tech, Sam Houston State, Rice, SMU, Sam Houston again, UTEP. So when you look at it, against real football teams, he's only 12-6. He's 1-5 in big games against top 10 teams. 1-5 against Alabama. He's 4-6 in against teams in the top 30. Compared to VY, Vince Young, he was 5-1 against top 10 teams. Against top 30 teams, he was 8-1. So he's playing in those big moments. He's elevating Texas. And you're saying, oh, the Texas run game, they had Jamal Charles. Well, Jamal Charles was getting all of those yards because of the zone read. Teams were keyed in on Vince Young. He was opening, just him being on the field was creating opportunities for Jamal Charles, who, yes, Jamal Charles was a great player, but Vince Young was elevating his team. No one can name a wide receiver for Texas that year. If no one outside of Texas, the state of Texas, knows Quan Cosby. Weed. That's from research today. All right, he doesn't have the Mike Evans, the Seals Jones. There's a couple other guys from the Aggies who went to the NFL. A guy named Labhart. Who knows? But it's not like his weapons were super crazy, all right? Most of this aura of that team is because Vince Young is elevating the players around him. And you mentioned, football is a team sport where 22 players touch it. Only one player touches it every single time, though, on offense, the quarterback. And so I don't think you can't have 10 amazing players in just an absolute scrub at the quarterback position and keep winning games. You need that guy to perform and consistently perform. And Vince Young did that. He played, I would say that Manziel had the Alabama game and one other game, which was his
OU Cotton Bowl freshman year.
OU Cotton Bowl. That was OU was ranked 11 in that game. All right. The year in 2004, Texas beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Vince Young missed a Rose Bowl here back-to-back, one of 4 players at the time to win the Rose Bowl back-to-back and then be named MVP of the game back-to-back. He beat a number 6 Michigan team with Chad Henne. I mean, he was trying to look for the stats here. Then he wins that national championship. He also balled out in the Big 12 championship, which is another thing, consistent championships. He's winning. Just winning anything is more than what Manziel did. Manziel didn't get any big wins. His big wins, it's mainly, if you're remembered for a play that's regular season, you're basically John Starks. John Starks is remembered for dunking on, I don't even know, his dunk on, no one even knows. You can't remember John Starks. That's my point. If you have a regular season,
he dunked on Pippen and Jordan at once.
Well, probably wasn't in a finals victory, that's for sure. If Manziel elevating the Aggies isn't, it's kind of to be what expected. And the Aggies weren't suffering, right? We've seen the Longhorns get these amazing recruiting classes, but you've seen what happens when they don't have a general there to lead these people. They've not been good for, 10, 11 years? They haven't lived up to their expectations. You can't just roll out these recruits and expect to win. It took a leader, and Vince Young was my time's up. Vince Young was a great leader, and he elevated the players around him.
Okay, first of all, you keep bringing up who we played. Again, Manziel's strength of schedule both years were tougher than anything Vince Young had in his 3 years. That's just the bottom line of the strength of schedule, right? That's just what it is. You can say we played who, cupcakes, whatever. At the end of the day, Manziel played tougher competition on average than what Vince Young did. I never said 22 players touch the ball. It's just that there are more factors into what goes around a quarterback or building a football team versus just 5 players on the court. We're talking over a 5 times difference, like 4 to 5 times difference of the amount of players who play a role or have a responsibility. And if any one of them makes a mistake, it could be a big play or a score, right? That was my point to that. Again, you guys had what was our wide receivers ranked besides Mike Evans? There's really nobody you could even think of. You guys had the number 1 run game in the country. You guys had a top 10 defense. Manziel never had anything like that. When you say Texas or Vince Young went 5-1 against top-ranked opponents, was it him or was it his team around him that played good defense, that ran the ball right? That's kind of my point, right? Also, you guys also had a tight end that almost got the best tight end of the award in the country as well. All right, let's get into the stats, right? So I'm going to go over the career stats real quick. And in my opinion, this is just so astronomically how much better Manziel is, right? Ian, if you had to guess, how many more total yards per season did Manziel average over Vince Young?
Totes. 400.
2,000 yards a season more on average than Vince Young. 2,000 more total yards. I want people to let that sink in for just a second. 2,000 total more yards per season than what Vince Young averaged, right? And for all this flack of, Manziel couldn't pass, Manziel's rating was a 164 for his career. Vince Young's was a 145. We have TDs. Manziel had 63 total TDs passing in his 2 years. Vince Young had 44, okay? The numbers are so staggering about how much better Manziel is that I'm almost scared I might cop a body here if I keep going, right? How many attempts do you think Vince Young had in his first year, his freshman year? Total attempts.
Rushing?
No, passing. 143. Do you know how many attempts Manziel had? 434. And guess who had the better completion percentage every year? Manziel. Manziel had 68 and 70% completion percentage for his 2 years. Young never got that. He didn't even sniff that. He got 59, 59, 65. So Manziel's easily a better passer. It's not even close. More yards. He literally had more passing yards than Young did his entire 3 years. We go to rushing yards, right? Manziel had almost 2,200 rushing yards, and in 3 years, Vince Young had almost like 31-30, right? So about the same pace there. TDs, rushing TDs, Vince Young had 37, Manziel had 30. We look at the average per rush, it's 6.3 to 6.9. So they're pretty comparable in terms of their rushing yards and attempts and all that. But in Manziel's freshman year, he had over 1,400 rushing yards. The most Vince Young ever got was 1,080. So again, at their peaks and what they accomplished in terms of stats, not even close. It's not even a conversation.
All right. So you mentioned, strength of schedule just means you are playing hard opponents. One, it's not Texas' fault they can't play themselves. Two, the Aggies didn't win those games. The strength of record is what people want to look at. And that's where you see that Manziel only won one game against the top 10 team. The Vince Young had crazy stats against top 10 teams, against top 30 teams, right? 5-1 against top 10 teams. So, and then you mentioned, let's see what else you said here. The run game, you keep mentioning the run game. It was the number one run game because VY is also getting 80 yards a game. And not to mention, those teams that Vince Young was on, they were getting such big leads that they're not going to be passing. So Johnny Manziel having more passing stats doesn't really matter because they're going to be running the ball to, just kind of take it easy on these teams. They're winning by 20 points a game, something crazy like that. I did the stats here, and if you combine 2004, 2005 against Power 5 opponents, they were averaging on offense 41 points and on defense 19. So they were up by 22. If you look at the Aggies for the 2 years of Manziel, it was 36 points per game offense, 28 defense. Those are close games. So Manziel does need to be airing it out more. The Longhorns will, of course, be running when they have those big leads. And then you mentioned freshman year. Freshman year, of course, he had less attention. He didn't start half of his freshman year. So, he was going to have way less less passing attempts. There we go. And then in big games, you mentioned, what did he do in those big games? Was it him or was it his team? Well, again, in Michigan in the Rose Bowl game, 180 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 192 rushing, 4 touchdowns against number 6 Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Ohio State, number 4 ranked Ohio State in 2005, scores the go-ahead touchdown with 2.5 minutes left. Leading us in the 2005 Big 12 championship game, which the Longhorns won 70-3. He was 14 of 17 with 3 touchdowns passing, 1 rushing touchdown, and led the Longhorns to a touchdown on 9 of their first 10 drives. All right, and then I've kind of not gotten to really paint the picture here of just how big of an accomplishment it was to take down that 2005 USC team. All right. At the time, Mark Mays on ESPN saying, this is the best team except for maybe the Nebraska, whatever year that was. Herb Street saying 2011 Hurricanes, and then this USC team, right? They ran a special like all through Christmas of putting USC up against all-time teams just every day on ESPN. Sports Illustrated said that they had the greatest collection of skill players in history. They were on a 34-game win streak spanning 3 seasons. 2 championships, going for a 3-peat, 2 Heisman Trophy winners. No one thought it was going to be close. I think Vegas at one time was 7.5, 8-point underdogs, the Longhorns, all right? And then BYU, I didn't even think the Longhorns were going to win that game. I bet on USC. And then Vince Young goes in, and if you have a great team, all right, then why is Vince Young 30 of 40 passing, 267, 19 rushes, 200 yards, 467 yards from one player, and 3 TDs against the juggernaut USC team? The game-winning touchdown with 19 seconds left. They're down 12 with 6.5 left, and Vince Young leaves 2 drives. That USC team had 29 NFL players. 16 were on defense. Ray Maluga, Clay Matthews, Keith Rivers, Cushing. Rivers was second in Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. Cushing, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Clay Matthews, I think he was second. He had a bunch of Pro Bowls. Those guys were getting Rookie of the Year because they were men in college.
You good?
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up our best games here because I wanted to dive into it a little bit. Who do you think had the better quarterback rating in terms of VY versus USC or Manziel versus Bama? And keep in mind, all those people you just mentioned, USC was the 35th ranked defense that year. Do you know what Bama was ranked that year? Number 1. And they also went on to win a title. So I know that's Aggie logic to you guys, but it's just saying in terms of greatest games, right, and who we played, we also played a title contender and won. And we won in Tuscaloosa, not a neutral field. Although I know it was the Rose Bowl. It was in California. You guys still got a lot of tickets, though it wasn't quite the home court that USC probably usually gets. We went into Tuscaloosa against the eventual champion, number 1 ranked defense that Manziel has to play against. And do you want to know what his quarterback rating was compared to Young's? Young had a 131 quarterback rating. Manziel had a 167 quarterback rating. Now, I know you got the 200 yards on the ground. That's very impressive. That was the difference, no doubt. Manziel also, though, against that same defense, had 92 yards on the ground for a 5-yard average, which is nothing to sneeze at. Wasn't as good as Young's against USC. I understand that. But again, USC was the 35th ranked defense in the nation. It's not even close to compared to what Manziel had to go against, right? And then if we also wanted to get a little deeper into the the total team, right? So USC had 29 eventual NFL players on that roster y'all played, compared to y'all's 23, right? Bama had 24 NFL players, so you guys literally had one less NFL than what Bama had in 2012, and A&M that year had 14. So again, you're kind of listing, like, Young is good, there's no doubt, right? You're kind of listing, though, all these things that were an accomplishment from the entire team. If we are simply just going to look at what Vince Young did compared to Manziel, right? If you just substitute them and flip them, Manziel and UT, who knows what they would have done? Who absolutely knows what they would have done? Because there is no single year that Vince Young had as good or better year than Manziel. Nowhere. And again, we can keep bringing all this up, but again, the strength of schedule is still harder for A&M. They had a couple really close losses. I think the year that they beat Bama, they lost Manziel's first game, they lost by 3 in Florida, I believe, right? And that was back when Florida was still pretty good. Florida, let's see, I think I have it right here, actually. Yeah, Florida, they ended up being 24th, but it was at Florida, we lost by 3 points, right? Manziel's first game. So, I mean, we're talking about the difference in caliber of stats here, and if you were just to simply flip them, and Manziel produces what he produces, and Young produces what he produces, it's not even close what UT would have done compared to Young, especially right off the bat, right? And his second year. And again, Manziel won a Heisman. Vince Young never did. Manziel, in my opinion, right, him going into Bama and winning was almost just as good as beating that third team of the USC trying to win their three-peat, right? And you also brought up this, like, oh, well, UT's up by a lot of points, and so they're just going to run the ball out, right? You're kind of like agreeing with me that your team was really good across the board, right? And again, if Manziel could have done that, then yeah, I guess so, that would have been nice. But he couldn't, because his team wasn't as good. He had to do more with less against tougher competition. And also the way he went into the SEC, which was way tougher than the Big 12 at the time, is way more impressive than Vince Young's career and the teams that he beat. You guys essentially, OU every other year is like a tough game. I mean, that's about it. I don't even know if OU was any good at that time. I can't even remember. But, I mean, when we just simply look at Manziel's stats and what he did and what he accomplished, winning youngest player at the time to ever win a Heisman, the first freshman to ever win a Heisman, his numbers as a freshman are off the charts. And then you would say, well, he had a bit of a letdown his second year. Not really. His rushing yards came down, but his passing yards went through the roof, and he was arguably an even better passer his second year. Again, Vince Young's best year does not even sniff Johnny Manziel's jockstrap on his worst year. It's just as simple as that in terms of the numbers. And one last thing, I went and I looked up, every year I went and looked up their highs, right? What did they do in terms of like their best performance in any category every year, correct? And there was one game in Young's freshman year where he went like 1 of 1, right? Like you're saying, maybe he didn't play that much, right? Manziel in 2012, his highest was an 83% completion, 453 passing yards, 229 rushing, a 222 rating, 6 TDs. 2013, 80%, 464 pass, 124 rush, 298 rating. The ratings are absolutely crushing Vince Young, by the way. 6 total TDs. In 2003, you had his highs were 213 passing yards. By the way, at the end of the year, he was definitely the starter. 163 rushes, 221 rating, 2 total TDs was his best as a freshman. I mean, we can at least agree, right? Manziel's best year, right, statistically dominates Vince Young. Do we agree on that?
You're talking about passing stats.
Or rushing. Again, he rushed over 1,400 yards his freshman year. Vince Young never got above like 1,100, I don't think.
It's like he's being penalized for winning games, though. Like he's putting his teams up so much.
Longhorns are winning, right? That's what I mean. Like you are kind of like strafing along with how good UT was. I'm talking about what Manziel did, and it's not even close what Manziel did compared to Vince Young on paper. It's not even close.
If you're saying here's passing stats, this makes you better, then you could put Case Keenum up here, and then Case Keenum would be better than Vince Young and Johnny Manziel. That doesn't mean everything just because he has more stats. And also, Manziel was a redshirt freshman. There's a big difference between a real freshman coming in and playing, starting half the season, and a redshirt who sat half the year to learn the offense. That's another big difference. And the regular season stuff you're bringing up is like when we argued T-Mac versus Dirk. Dirk's going to get the nod as a greater player, but we would say, oh, T-Mac could do better in the regular season. He can put up more numbers. It's easier for him to score. That's not everything, though.
Okay, you know what, Ian? I'll even give you Manziel's redshirt year where he didn't do anything, no stats. He still beats Vince Young. Like, that's how crazy it is. Even if I gave you a 0, a goose egg average, right, for Manziel, he still has more totals than Vince Young.
Yeah, but putting up, no, I just mentioned it. We can mention who's that Hawaii quarterback. Like, you can put a ton of dudes in here, put up a lot of stats. Yeah, Cole Brennan.
Yeah, we're talking the SEC here, right? Like,
no, you keep bringing that
Keenum
up, but
at U of
he didn't
H,
win against those teams.
Colt Brennan of Hawaii. Like, we're talking about the SEC going into Bama, the people that they played, the strength of schedule. It's not the same comparison.
So you're saying Manziel played these tough teams, but he went 1-5 against top 10 teams, 4-6 in the top 30. Like, I don't understand. Like, just because they're on your schedule, if you lose to them, it doesn't. You don't get points for that.
The argument is not A&M as a team versus Texas as a team, right? That's not the argument. The argument is Manziel versus Vince Young.
Yeah, these are the people they played. Like, if you're the quarterback, you should be beating these teams. And I don't know where you got the strength of schedule thing from, because how can Vince Young be 5-1 against top 10 teams, playing the same amount of top 10 and more top 30 teams, but have a weaker strength of schedule?
Ask the guys who do strength of schedule. Like, he was like 23rd, 26th, something like that his 3 years. Actually, I think I wrote it down here.
And you also
strength of schedule in 2003, right? He played a little bit. 43rd. 2004, 23rd. 2005, 23rd. Aggies in 2012, 20th. Aggies in 2013, 22nd. So both years are harder than any.
They're like 1 and 2 years, but he's not. They're like 1 and 2 differences, right? 20 and 23 and 22.
Well, I only say that because you bring up like the cupcake thing, as if you guys weren't also playing Colorado and Rice or whatever.
We played 4 total, and the Aggies played 8. I took them off for the stats, though. I took out the
8 total for his 2 years?
Manziel played 8 total in 2 years, yes, non-Power 5 teams. He only had 16, I think it was, against Power 5 teams. Manziel, I think, was 16 and 8.
Let's see, and let me look up 2005. You got Tulane, ended the year with Washington State. Rice. I mean,
that's 2. It's Tulane and Rice, right?
Tulane, Washington State, Rice. I mean, New Mexico State.
Power 5 team.
That's what I mean. You guys, New Mexico State, like, it's like, oh, they're Power 5. They're Power 5.
That's a bowl game. You're counting a bowl game. His freshman year. I'm talking about the 2004.
But the point is who y'all played. That's what I'm just trying to bring up.
Yeah, the stats I mentioned, though, when I was saying about their win-loss, I only counted the 2004-2005 seasons because I wasn't going to break down which game Vince Young started his freshman year.
You guys played Rice again, North Texas.
Those are the 2.
Kansas.
And then the next year, there's only 2. Well, you got Vanderbilt in there.
Yeah, I know.
Start doing that.
But still, Kansas and Colorado and Baylor, they were so horrible.
You also mentioned Manziel's Heisman, dude. I mean, I would think every one of our wiffle ball players could beat Colin Klein and Monte Teo for the Heisman.
Bro,
come on now.
No way. Dude, his stats, that's what I mean. Like, you look at any quarterback stats from any year. Manziel crushes it. It doesn't. We can compare him against Heismans across the decades. And his freshman year is in another stratosphere, dude. He's averaging like 5,000 yards total a season.
But it's the reason that you would never say, like LeBron and his stats make him better. Stats don't make you better. You still have to win.
I mean, but that's like a team argument for winning. We're talking about quarterback play here. And again,
you can see
how can
in those games,
Ian, how can you deny you guys having 23, 24 NFL players versus 14 for A&M? Like, do you not think that that's like a difference in terms of what he's working with compared to Vince Young?
Well, okay, but when Vince Young got up to the teams that had the same amount of players, that talent-wise, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, USC, he was winning. Manziel, when he was getting up to even teams like Florida and them, they probably had equal, kind of similar amounts, and he was losing. He jumped up once and beat Bama, and you're saying it's not a team. If you get 467 yards yourself, then I would say that Vince Young, for the most part, beat USC because you can erase the defense. They gave up 31 points or whatever it was. They're not really contributing, so you can get rid of all those players.
Wait, say it again?
Vince Young, 467 yards himself in the Rose Bowl. That's single-handedly beating somebody. And then
no,
USC,
you never in football it's not like that. Like single-handedly beating people. Like they
I
held.
would say rushing is like one of the best ways where you are doing it more.
35th ranked defense. Don't forget that. So I mean, like USC was not like this total juggernaut on defense that people think they were.
If you're going for 3 straight years of being undefeated, trying to do a three-peat, you get everyone's best shot.
The first 2 years do not carry over to the third year. That's not like how it works. It's not like they were so good.
For your opponents.
They were
your
so good.
Carry that over.
Oh, we're talking about college football, dude. Like everyone's playing to win.
Yeah, but they're definitely.
That's kind of like I don't really know if that holds up in court. But like, do you not acknowledge though that Texas talent across the board was better than A&M? Like you make this argument all the time, and now it's like you won't just admit it.
No, I'm saying that better talent, but it's not like the Aggies didn't have good talent or didn't sometimes lose to teams that were as talented or maybe less talented as well.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't look at. See, this is what I mean. Like you're bringing in total team like win-loss, right? Like I didn't go through and look at like how good Florida was compared to A&M on Johnny's first game, right? I'm looking at what Johnny Manziel did overall for his career versus like largely what the overall concept of who he played versus Vince Young.
You can't go stat for stat because one person has better stats. Like he also attempted more passes. He's in Kevin Sumlin's offense. It's way different than like the zone read. It's more pass heavy. It's kind of apples and oranges from that scenario.
Dude, like
I mean, we're both
we
both
Vince
took different
Young.
stances.
So what was Vince Young so good at compared to Manziel? Besides what, like
winning.
His team,
He's in the business
his team
of winning.
constantly winning. But that's what I mean. Like,
winning.
If his stats aren't as good as Manziel, then I guess it wasn't totally because of Vince Young. If he's averaging like 2,000 less yards, his completion percentage isn't as good, and all these other things, right? Didn't rush for as many yards. How can you then argue that like, well, Vince Young was the entire reason that like Texas was so good?
Did you think I was going to come in here and get into a stat debate?
Yeah, it's quarterback versus quarterback, not team versus team.
No way, dude. Because you could look up NFL quarterbacks who never won anything that just accumulated stats. That doesn't make them better.
We're talking college.
Like Phillip Rivers, though, putting up numbers, but no one's taking him.
We're talking college, though.
Same thing in college.
No,
Case
like
Keenum,
salary
Cole
cap,
Brennan,
recruiting, it's totally different. It's completely different. Just because it's the same game doesn't make it the same landscape. That was a good quote. We should write that down.
Hold on, I had a stat in here for you.
But it's just like the stats are not even close, right? Like you could say, well, he throws more. Well, he also has a way better completion percentage by like 5 to 10 points on certain years, right? So it can't just be, well, he just throws a lot. Like he's throwing better too.
Well, so is Ryan Dinwiddie of Boise State the best quarterback ever with his 168.9 QBR, the highest of all time for a career?
No. Manziel got 164, so I mean it's not that crazy.
Ryan Dinwiddie, no one heard of him because he plays for Boise State. Like,
yeah, and who do they play? No one knows. That's what I mean. Like,
but playing good teams, you have to beat them. You can't just play them and lose and say we played them.
All the other quarterbacks you brought up so far play in such weaker conferences and competition compared to A&M, right? If you want to throw in the non-conference games, like that's fine. But when we do play people in our own conference, in one breath you're saying we play cupcakes, and in the other breath you say, well, when you guys play top-ranked competition, right? So like we're obviously playing
I took out
people.
Your cupcakes.
We're obviously playing people who are tough. We're obviously playing good competition, right? I mean, on some degree, you brought it up.
You're not winning against those teams. And I took out those teams for stat purposes because you're not gonna count 8 teams. Like that's kind of ridiculous.
Do you
think that aren't in the Power 5?
Do you think A&M was as good as those teams? Like in terms of talent, NFL players, recruiting classes, the years that Manziel was there?
What teams?
Whoever we lost
The
to.
ones
Remember,
they lost to?
I told you that the recruiting classes Manziel walked into: 2010, number 17; 2011, number 27; 2012, number 15. Compared to what Vince Young walked into: 2002, number 1; 2003, number 15; 2004, number 10. And you guys had 10 more NFL talent-worthy players on that 2005 team than what Manziel walked off of. Like, that's what I mean. Like, the talent around Vince Young is head and shoulders better. And if we just largely say, okay, take the strength of schedule, they're largely the same, right? We'll just throw that out and say it's a tie. Still, Manziel accomplished more with less than what Vince Young did.
Okay, well, not having less can't be a knock. I think if you put Vince Young on the Aggies, he does more than what Manziel did. He might not beat. Let's say he doesn't beat Bama that one game.
No.
But consistently, they're better. Yes, and I don't think Manziel does near what Vince
Young
Young did.
Heisman, dude.
You think Vince Young? I mean, you think Manziel only loses 2 games as a starter and then wins the national championship? No, I don't
Yes,
trust
if he's
Manziel
on the
to do
Aggies
that.
roster, yes.
I am so confident in my argument, Nick.
What?
I think I can beat you in a rematch. Colt McCoy versus Manziel.
What does Vince Young do that makes everyone so much better around him? He doesn't throw as good as Manziel.
It's because. Well, he's doing a different kind of offense, but he is hitting worse receivers. I would argue Manziel had way better receivers.
He had one good wide receiver, but again, you guys had a run game too. Like, if you want to try and compare Mike Evans to your entire run game, I don't know.
4 running backs drafted, the Aggies with Manziel.
What? Who?
Christine Michael, Molina. I don't know them off the top of my head. Come on now.
Christine Michael is okay.
Hey, don't forget.
He's no Jamal
Laphard,
Charles though.
That receiver.
Y'all had, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
But the thing is also, like, there's just no, his completion percentage. It'd be one thing if, like, Young threw 10 less attempts a game and they had roughly the same completion percentage. Manziel is 10% better on his completion percentage. Like, it's not enough to where you could say, oh, well, it's like a difference of style, right? Manziel is just a flat out better thrower in college than Young even sniffed.
I'm looking at their yards per attempt here. 9.3. Those are all about the same.
Except for the completion percentage, the attempts, total yards. Dude, in 2 years, he did more than what Vince Young... Like, that's what I'm saying. It's not like... Even if we took, like, a 3 to 3 year comparison and they were all close and Vince Young won the way he did, well, then okay, like, you win. The tiebreaker obviously goes to the guy who won, like, a championship or won more games, right? But when you look at what he did in 2 years compared to Vince Young, and it's not even close. Like, it's just, he is head and shoulders statistically better, achieved more, won a Heisman. I mean, I just don't understand how you could say, well, if you just plug Vince Young into the A&M roster, they win a championship? Like, no way, dude.
No, I didn't say they win. I said he does more than what Manziel did.
I don't think so.
I think so.
Based on what?
Yeah. What is 2 seasons? 24
based on
games?
what? Again, I keep asking, but, like, based on what?
Vince Young. I mean, you can't just say everything is based on stats, or else you could say that why would Michael Jordan beat anyone who averaged more points per game than him? Because there are intangibles.
But nobody did average more. He had like 7 scoring titles.
He's not the best scorer of
but
all
that's
time
what I mean.
in the NBA. Like,
we're not talking about close. It's not like it's like Jordan. If Jordan just averaged 1 point less than someone and won, oh well, the other guy was better. Like, no. We're talking about a difference here, like, statistically. That's what I mean. Well, it's not like it's close.
What about their opponents? Like, you keep throwing out the top 10, what their records against top 10 teams because you're saying that Texas was better. But Vince Young still performed in those games, like, absolutely balled out in those games.
Manziel did?
And you get, no.
Manziel balled out in every game just about.
Those stats you're looking up, there are, I mean, say what you want, there are 8 games of stats versus SMU, South Carolina State, Louisiana Tech, those teams.
He had a better rating against Alabama than you did USC. That's what I mean. Like, we can go game for game and against, like, we'll take, like, the top 6, 8 games every year. Manziel will still crush you.
That stage, there's something to be said, though, about the stage is different than that. A Rose Bowl, the 2005 Rose Bowl is different than a regular season Bama.
And the Cotton Bowl in 2012, they won, like, 44-13.
Against number 11 ranked Oklahoma.
Vince
Young was
Again, you
balling
say,
out. What,
well,
he
I
threw
mean,
up
come
5
on, one
touchdowns
spot
on
out of the
Michigan?
top 10. One spot out of the top 10. They won 41 to
Vince Young,
13.
he's beating number 6 Michigan, number 4 Ohio State. Oh, by the way, you said what was Oklahoma when they played? 2004 Oklahoma played in the national championship. So that was one of Vince Young's losses. Was
Yeah.
2004
Well,
Oklahoma.
I guess he wasn't that good against top competition. I mean, Manziel beat a number 1 team. You beat a number 1 team.
The regular season, Alabama is different than the role. Also, that USC team is better than that Alabama team. I don't think that's.
I actually was trying to look that up, and they were fairly similar. I think Bama had 24 NFL players. USC had 29. But again, when we look at Young went up against the 35th best defense. Manziel went up against the best defense in the country, and both were championship, contending teams. Like, I just don't think that's the same. Like, his work of body against the defense versus Vince Young's work of body against that defense. Like, you can say Young had a better game when you take in his rushing yards. I would give you that. Not his passer rating, though. Again, as a quarterback, Manziel was like 30 points better in his QB rating. And, again, went up against a way better defense than what Vince Young went up against.
Yeah, but then you got to start looking at, I'm pretty sure the offenses that USC played were way better than 2012 SEC offenses, which were nothing. I think Bama and them were scoring like 18 points a game.
USC never played a Manziel, I could tell you that.
That's why they the Aggies did so good. They came in with the Big 12 offense, and the SEC was like, "What the hell is going on?"
So are the Aggies good or not?
They're all right under Manziel, but they're
all right. There you go. The Aggies were all right. Manziel was a monster, but let's get it clear: the Aggies were all right.
We're never gonna agree here,
huh?
Take it to the polls.
Yeah, the Aggies were all right. I'm glad we agree on that one. Texas's team was stacked. Vince Young, by the way, Vince Young is still is the second or third best recruit of all time, ranked, I think.
So I think because he's got that perfect 1.0 rating.
Yeah, he's fucking. Yeah, it was fucking crazy. Manziel was a 3-star, which always shocked me, but I guess it kind of makes sense.
I think it was baseball related.
Maybe
they wanted him to play baseball.
Well, I'll put the poll up after the stream, so I don't have it up right now, but we can do it afterwards.
Someone is asking about, do you think someone in the 90s had the same skill level as Kyrie Irving? Uh-oh.
Oh. I guess, are we done? We can move on. I think we said it all.
I think we went over 4 rounds.
Yeah. Ted Ginn was the most exciting college football player. He played quarterback, right? In college?
No, he's returning a bunch of kicks. I think Ohio State. Am I right?
Did he play quarterback too?
No, I don't think he was wide.
Because he moved to wide receiver in the pros, I thought.
No, are you thinking of the guy from Michigan?
Maybe.
The dude with the dreads or whatever. Not pulling up Ted Ginn.
Oh, he was a defensive back as a freshman.
Defensive back as a freshman.
Then went to a wide receiver in 2004.
He had 4 touchdowns, punt returns in 2004.
Why did I think he played QB?
Dang, who's six return touchdowns total? No, 8 total.
There was a guy on the Raiders, I thought, maybe he moved to quarterback.
No, I think you're thinking of a later Ohio State quarterback,
maybe
Braxton and all them. Let's see, where's Ren at in the chat? Ryan, who was the Ohio State quarterback that was a receiver that switched over? I think it was Braxton or something.
I don't understand why he keeps bringing up Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. That has nothing to do with us talking about quarterbacks, right?
I think he's talking about the level of just sheer monsterness that Vince Young took down.
But he didn't take him down. Your defense did.
I think 467 yards took him down. Our defense gave up 35 points.
Yeah. But again, they were the number 2. You guys had the number 1 offense and a top 10 defense. No, your run game was a big part of that. You guys had the best run game in the country that year, by the way.
Because he's part of it. That's 80 yards a game from him.
80 yards a game compared to Jamal Charles. I think he was averaging 150 or something. Something crazy.
Everyone. I mean, you got 10 guys on Vince Young, 1 guy on Jamal Charles. He's going to outrun him.
Hold on, let me see here.
Terrell Pryor. There you go.
Terrell Pryor, that's who I was thinking of.
Well, I do appreciate you giving me a shot at the GOAT, though.
Yeah, no problem. Remember, I'm arguing in the minority here, and I just think the stats are so overwhelming. It's not even close.
What we had one we were talking about earlier before this that we could do for the rematch. It wasn't was it the 2011 finals? No, I think we were talking about something before this argument.
Oh, the 06, if it was rigged. There was that one, and then a Rockets finals run versus 2011 finals run. And then we could also argue how good USC was when y'all actually played them in 05. I think Texas was the better team.
Well, because they won.
Well, I just think on paper,
going into that, it was like unheard of, like what ESPN was doing here. Like they were creating programming around USC.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean, again, they had a 35th ranked defense. Y'all guys had the best run game in the country.
Did you hear those linebackers?
It doesn't matter if you're the 35th. You can quote me guys all day, but if like they're the 35th ranked defense, they're the 35th ranked defense.
No, because if a team plays like SEC offenses, they're gonna have a better defense than like a Pac-12 team.
I don't know. Pac-12 was like all offense back then, weren't they?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Throwing it around.
I mean, I don't know. I have to go. I didn't dive into like who everyone played like that. I was focused on like Manziel versus Vince Young, and Manziel's better across the board. It's not even close. In every statistical category.
There's no way.
Dude,
if I conceded to that fact, I would lose. If I said, "Oh, we can only compare stats," then that's a losing argument. But there are other things. No, there are other points to being.
That's it right there. I'm clipping that out.
No, we're not going stat for stat. We're not,
because this isn't like the NFL with the salary cap. Like, who is around you matters. So, like, when you bring up winning in college, it's just not. It's not like, I don't think it holds as much weight as you think it does. That's why I was saying, if we just take out like the iconic game, right, and we just look at them as quarterbacks. And it's not like Manziel was just a little better statistically, and Vince Young won more. So like you could have this kind of teeter-totter, well, like whatever. Like there's like Vince Young here, and then Manziel is statistically like way up here. And so like I just don't understand how you say like, well, if you put Vince Young on the Aggies, they win more games, or like if you put Manziel on Longhorns, they don't do as well or better. Like. That just doesn't compute like at all with me.
But it does make a difference on one, where your talent is, and if you are the one who is doing like Vince Young was driving that machine. He wasn't Ken Dorsey flicking the ball out to Andre Johnson and all those like Shockey and Kellen Winslow, right? He didn't have studs at wide receiver. He might have had and also what they did in the NFL, like going like Linus Swede and.
So wait.
Quan Cosby.
You say he's making players around him better.
Was a monster.
You said he's making players around him better, but yet there's no wide receivers to speak of.
No, he's elevating. Yeah, he's elevating Linus Swede and Quan Cosby to the NFL.
But he didn't elevate them. He didn't elevate them. They weren't that good.
The fact that they went to the NFL. Yeah, when they're not with Vince Young, they weren't good. When it wasn't Vince Young running this ship at UT.
So he's not as good a passer. Like he's just not.
The fact that he had scrubs that made the NFL, and then people got him, and they were like, "Oh, these guys
scrubs
actually
don't make
suck."
the NFL, dude. You can't
Linus
say that.
Swede, Quan Cosby, they didn't have a shot.
They made it though. It's still NFL talent.
But these aren't real players. Didn't Seals Jones actually play in the NFL, and Mike Evans and Christine Michael?
I don't know, but I mean, he never had a Jamal Charles. He never had a top 10 defense. You know, like if that's what I mean. If you want it, that's what I'm saying. If you want to go across the board, and you want to compare what they had, like. In terms of Vince Young winning, well, Vince Young definitely wasn't chunking the ball around winning games, right? And I'm sorry, but 80 yards a game or whatever isn't exactly the X factor that you think it is for like why their offense was so good, right? They had the best run game in the country, and they had a top 10 defense. Like that is like if you give Manziel that, it's over. Like it's just absolutely over.
No, a lot of those things are a reflection, though, of the things that already happened in the game. Vince Young gives them a lead. Now they're just running the ball, running the timeout.
Well, I mean, again,
And
being able to keep a lead must be nice with the top 10 defense.
if they had that talent and didn't do anything, it would be an easy argument, right? But they had this level of talent. I think they probably exceeded their talent or did what they were expected to do and won a championship against in one of the greatest. It's like, what else could he possibly do?
You could argue their talent exceeded expectations, but it wasn't their wide receivers. Like, it wasn't Vince Young making wide receivers amazing.
The big talent on the team, I would say, were the defensive backs, Vince Young and Jamal Charles, the running game. The rest of it was just kind of, I think Arakpo was maybe a freshman. I don't think he was playing big playing time then. He would have been the best defensive player for sure.
You guys had 23 NFL players, so, I mean, that's the difference between 23 and 14 on terms of NFL talent is huge.
Right, but I would say if you told a team in college right now you're going to have 14 NFL players, they're going to do better than like something in 4, whatever his second year was.
Well, who are we playing every year? Oh, you're playing Bama and LSU, guys who have 20-plus NFL players every year too. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, in terms of the team aspect, there's more context to it than just Vince Young is like this amazing guy who just won all the games for him. Like, I think Texas was way better as a team than what people realize or what they remember. That's why I said if you actually clear it out and you look at what's on paper, Manziel had more talent and he did not do as well. I mean, Young had more talent all the way across the board, not even close, and he did not perform as well as Manziel. Manziel had less talent, in my opinion, on average, played way harder competition in the SEC. This is back in 11-12 when the SEC was just romping everybody still, before it kind of evened up a little bit these last few years. And he did more with less. Like, as a quarterback, he easily outproduces Vince Young. It's not like Young or Manziel barely etched out Vince Young in passing, yards, attempts, completion percentage, rushing yards, etc. He blows him out of the water. And it's not even close.
But I think there's something to be said, too, of Vince Young got better every year as expectations went up. Expectations reached a peak for Manziel the second year, and he didn't perform better. The team was worse. The
team was worse, thank you.
No, he threw 13 interceptions.
He didn't run as much. When you say he had a dip, he didn't run as much. So like his rushing attempts went down by like 60 from year 1 to 2, and he went from 1,400 yards to 759, and that was mainly the difference. His passing from year 1 to 2, he had more completions, less attempts, more yards. So don't tell me he wasn't as good the second year. He was easily a better quarterback the second year. He just didn't run as much. So he didn't have like the total mind-blowing yards. But he still had 760 yards for 5.3 and 9 TDs. It's not like it was something to just not write home about. Like, it was still pretty fucking good.
Nah.
He was dude, his passing yard, over 4,000 yards on more completions and less attempts the second year. He did not go down his second year. He just didn't run the ball as much. And that was probably the plan, too, because they didn't want him to get hurt and stuff.
It seems like you're also just applying, like, if they win, it's Manziel. If they lose, it's the lack of talent. So Manziel's got to have some crossover there for wins and losses.
Well, I would say it's both, just like with Young. Like, it's both.
But so he never lost.
If I keep that landscape even, where like I say it's both, like it's both the talent around them and it's the quarterback, Manziel is like way better.
But watching that season, it was literally, if Longhorns were in a close game, it was him taking over. It wasn't, let's rely on our defense to get a stop. Let's pound Jamal Charles. It was always Vince Young taking over. Like, you can watch the footage and see it.
I'd have to. I didn't dive that deep into every game Young played in the last 2 minutes or whatever.
You didn't break down every game film tape?
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, well, in spots, Young was better a little bit here or there, right? Like, we're talking about who is the better quarterback. And, like, it's just the numbers are astronomical. Like, you have to at least admit that. They're like, Manziel's numbers are in another atmosphere compared to Vince Young. Like, they just are.
I'm gonna look up. How many more attempts did he get? Like, probably 1 million? They have, like, the same yards per attempt.
Yeah,
It's
but
just he's
Manziel has a
throwing
better
more, like, sheer
completion
volume.
percentage every year. His 2 years were better than anything Vince Young did.
Need to give Vince Young Mike
Vince
Evans.
Young's completion percentage his first 2 years were 59 and 59, and then he had 65. Manziel's were 68 and 70. Like, I mean, just going off completion percentage or quarterback rating, you could do that too.
I was only counting Vince Young's second years.
And like even if
Second,
even
third
if you
year.
take away, that's what I mean. Like even if let's say we take away Vince Young's freshman year, right? It's not close. Like there's no getting around, like just the absurdity of Manziel's stats. Like it's just and again, it's not cupcake teams. He freaking played well against Alabama. He plays good against all these other good teams too. Might not have pulled out the victory, but I would say this: like what we should do is we should go see how the stats of Manziel versus like ranked teams versus Vince Young, and I bet you Manziel still blows Vince Young out of the water. That would
You
be
also
a
have
good.
to look at crucial situations, though.
Oh,
because
Ian,
you can't have
come on,
you can't
dude.
have 5 touchdowns and then you throw the pick to lose the game.
You wanted to compare quarterbacks and being like, well, only in this 2-minute window, Vince Young was better. Like,
No, I'm
we're
saying,
talking
like,
about
if you're-
quarterbacks.
Yeah, but part of it is winning games and like leading your team to victory when it matters. You can't just have a guy put up 5 touchdowns in the first 3 quarters who always throws 4 interceptions in the fourth and then say, look at his numbers. No one would want that guy.
But, like, again, the winning is not like it is in the pros. Like, Ren's bringing up, oh, well, like, McGrady's better, whatever. Like, in the pros, there is a salary cap. Everyone is kind of restricted to, in theory, getting, like, the same talent on a team as everyone else. I know it's not perfectly like that. But when we talk about college football, this is why I brought up recruiting and who Vince Young had around him versus Manziel. Like, Ren, you cannot get around that Vince Young had way better talent around him than Manziel. Like you have to take that into account. It's like the salary cap in baseball, right? It's like, why do people look at stats so much in baseball? Well, there's no salary cap in the Yankees and the Red Sox, in the Dodgers. You know, the same teams just about every year in, year out, are the best teams. Why? Because their talent is so much better, right? And so, no, like, stats are not everything, but if we can put context into college football and what those stats were accomplished on what teams and what quarterbacks had around them, then yeah, stats are kind of important to see what guys did. And we're not talking about Manziel playing at Hawaii or Boise State, right? We're talking about the SEC here, a good SEC. But
he wasn't winning those games.
Dude, but okay, so what if Manziel against ranked teams does better than Vince Young, like, by far and away?
It would be different because he'd probably have like some college championship appearances if he was winning those ranked games. If he went 5-1 against the top 10 or whatever Vince Young did.
Dude, like, Vince Young had such a better team. It's not even close. Like, you're the one now saying like Vince Young's hardware and his winning was because he was so much better. He wasn't. He just wasn't statistically anywhere on the board. That's what I'm saying. Like, if it was close, then yeah, your hardware would push you over the top.
You're also saying because my guy attempted more passes, he therefore has better stats, which makes him better.
I would say the completion percentage is more or less what I would hang my hat on over.
But generally, as you throw more, it tends to go actually up, not down. When you're not throwing a lot,
10%
the
though.
completion. It's not also that offense is built for like it's different. It's passing versus zone read.
Well, I mean, then he should get a bunch of
Evans
rushing yards, right? I mean, Manziel still got 1,400 rushing yards his freshman year. Vince Young never got over 1,100.
Didn't need to. Dude, Mike Evans was putting up over 1,100 yards a year, dude.
Yeah, that's Manziel, baby.
That's Mike Evans clearly was the better of those two.
In the pros, maybe, not as a college player.
The sheer monster, though.
You would take Evans over Manziel in college football, dude? Like, come on.
No, I wouldn't take him in college
crazy.
football. I would take Manziel because he plays quarterback, but Mike Evans, that's a huge factor. I don't think let me look up Linus Swede here. I don't even know where you got that nonsense. Probably played in 09.
There was some guy.
2004, 2005.
And
Linus Swede probably has like all 4 of his put together are like 1 year for Mike Evans.
you guys had 1, 2, 3 wide receivers go to the pros. That's nothing to sneeze at. Like that's pretty fucking good in 2005.
They were. I would be willing to bet they were all undrafted.
I mean, does it matter? NFL talent is NFL talent. Like there's no like maybe they sucked in the NFL, sure, but in college that means they were beasts.
I wonder if he has any actual game time.
And in 2005, you guys had like a top 3 tight end in the country too. So like that's another throwing option. And I wonder how much your running backs caught balls out of the backfield too. I didn't even look that up.
Hey, Aggies too. Y'all had 4 get drafted. I didn't know the names of 2 of them.
Where's Jamal Charles? Where is he at?
Absolute monster, no doubt.
Jamal Charles.
You're talking about Beck at tight end?
I don't know. I just knew you had some guy that almost won the best tight end in the country award, whatever that is.
Yeah, but that doesn't make him the actual top NFL prospect tight end. It just means he caught the
Oh
most
no,
passes.
I didn't say that. I just meant like in college. That's another like pretty good weapon that y'all had.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I can't think of his name. 2005.
David Thomas, and he did go to the NFL.
Undrafted?
No, I'm sure he was drafted. If I remember right, he was like really good. I was kind of reading about him a little bit. Rin, you're obviously just an Aggie hater, so like you're not even fun to talk to. You just like keep repeating shit that don't make any sense. Rin should come on here and debate. He'd get crushed.
What's he saying? Bledsoe won them the time. What is
he goes off in a million directions and like isn't. It's like, oh, Manziel was horrible and like Vince Young was just the best, like. And we did share that article earlier that essentially statistically looked at who the best quarterbacks of all time were, and Manziel was number 1. That's based on math and science. That's not Aggie logic. That's math and science.
Writes in an article that weighted stats more than winning, but it said that it weighted winning. But it had Colt McCoy above VY. It had Colt Brennan above, I think, Colt McCoy and Vince Young.
Is that because did McCoy play 4 years?
He played 4 years.
That's probably why. He's got more wins. So is he better than Vince Young? He won more.
No, he didn't win big games, all the big games.
Dude, when we're done here, I'm going to crunch the numbers of top 25 competition and see how they each did. And if it comes out that Manziel blows him away, I mean, are you just going to like deny it again, or like you have to like acknowledge it somewhat? No, again, if Manziel is doing everything he can in his power to win, but the other team's putting up 50, like that's not his fault. That's what I'm saying. In football, it's way different than basketball, where you get to play offense and defense. You're 1 of 5 players. If you wanted to, you could demand the ball every time and guard the best player, right? In football, Manziel's only responsible for what he can do as a quarterback.
If you look at the actual big games that Vince Young actually played in and won, watch him like at the end, even if he didn't do that good in the first 3, he leads like the game-winning drive against Ohio State with like a minute left. There's a different that's the part of like intangibles that people, I think that's why most people put Vince Young over Manziel, because like he would lead teams to victories. Even if Manziel puts up a ton of numbers, there's still some fuck-ups that happen.
Dude, the intangibles aren't even the same. Like, Manziel running out of the pocket is way better than Vince Young. There's just no doubt about that, dude. Now, this is, again, like I guess maybe we can find 2-minute drive stats, too, for Manziel and Vince Young. I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
It is the same as, like, when you are, like, you would say that Barkley's probably more talented than Duncan, but Duncan wins. So he just gets the nod.
No, I don't think that's a good comparison. Like, I'm trying to think of a good comparison. Like, again, you're kind of saying, like, I'd take Robert Horry over T-Mac. T-Mac who never won, and Horry who won 8 rings or whatever.
But he's not driving the ship. He's not the main guy. He's not the guy.
Hey, he's big shot Rob, baby. He's hitting big shots when it matters in the clutch, right?
But
That's
he's not
the argument.
The guy. No one's keying on him. He's not doing it when all eyes on him, leading his team there, getting there, and then also performing.
It's big shots. That's kind of my argument. Is like essentially I have T-Mac, and you're taking Robert Ory.
No, I'm not agreeing to that nonsense.
That's largely what your argument is.
No, because Robert Ory is not the main guy. That's not what I'm saying.
And so now we have Ren who says hardware is more important than stats, but he takes Manning over Brady.
He's just trolling us at this point.
So the categories, I'm just looking up that article again. The categories were passing yards per game, percentage of their team's total offense, and their best season. That's easily Manziel on that one. Total touchdowns, definitely Manziel. Winning percentage, you would have that one. How well they played in big games. See,
yeah, Vince Young had a 10 in that one. That article literally breaks down that Vince Young did way better in big games than Manziel.
Yeah. What did Manziel get?
Like a 4. I don't know, like a 6.
8
I can't
points.
remember. I just
8
know that.
points, 2 behind. So again, like that's what I mean. Like because he doesn't ultimately pull out the victory. Which, by the way, like let's say again they played Bama the next year and lost by like 21, right? Like, is that on Manziel? Whenever like let's say he scores 35 points on Bama but still loses by 2 touchdowns, like what is he supposed to do in that situation? You're kind of like penalizing him for things that are outside of his control. He goes out and dominates, which the stats show. But yet, if the other team scores more or what have you, like, there's nothing he can do about that. As in Vince Young's case, he's got a good running game. His passing numbers aren't really that good. So the winning and the getting the leads had to come from somewhere else, right? It came from the run game and it came from the defense.
No, there's stats like I didn't talk about him, but it's like what he was responsible for, and like his drives. Compared to, because they had to break it down to his drives, because the team drives, a lot of them were probably backup QBs or whatever. It was like he was putting like 60%. He was 3.8 points every time he went out there on the field. 3.8 points a drive.
I'd have to look it up, but I mean, there's just no way he scores more than Manziel. Like it's not how it is.
I think equal scenarios here, given the same team, it's going to be Vince Young.
Dude, Manziel threw for 37 touchdowns his second year. Vince Young threw 26 in 2005. Come on, dude. That's what Manziel did his freshman year. Dude, it's just, especially when you look at 2004, like whenever he was a bona fide starter, Young didn't get over, like, he 250 attempts on 59%, not even 2,000 total yards. Like, it was his worst yards per attempt year, too. 12 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Dude, come on, man. Like, oh my God. 12 touchdowns, 11 interceptions in 2004. It's definitely... What did he do against Oklahoma? I want to see this. What was his stats? Yeah. Maybe he had a good game. I don't know. Maybe he had a good game.
Manziel had 429 attempts. And he had 325. Like, that's a fourth of a season more.
What are you talking about? Young played more games than Manziel.
It's about attempts, like passing attempts.
Yeah, because he's a beast. Because our defense sucked.
I mean, good offense is sustaining long drives helps the defense.
Oh, my God, dude. Vince Young against Oklahoma. 8 of 23, 35%, 86 yards, 3.7 yards per attempt for a 66 rating. His rushing.
Maybe
his rushing. 16 attempts for 54 yards, 3.4.
That was a national title team that went to the national championship.
But you guys won that game, I think. Oh, no, you lost that game.
2004, we lost. We lost that game. We got crushed.
Yeah.
12-0.
Woo.
That team, that was like it's not a scrub. That's like a national title, like.
Wait, and then,
team.
Okay, and then I'm looking here, 2004 game logs. I need to look up Texas, I guess, huh? Some of those teams had to be ranked.
Oh yeah, Ohio State number 4. Michigan.
Yeah, I don't think it had it for just the player stats.
You talking about 2004 or 2005?
Whichever.
2004, they played Michigan in the Rose Bowl. That was 6. Probably Colorado was ranked back then.
Why don't they have the rankings next to them like the Aggie one? What am I looking here? 2012.
Oh, no. We
Oh,
don't
schedule and
need
results.
some
There we go. That's what I
din-din.
needed.
Hurry this up.
So you guys played one USC number 4 and then 24-10 against what? Texas Tech.
Juggernauts.
Yeah, Texas Tech being number 10. Vince Young against number 10 Texas Tech at the time. 12 of 22, 239 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions.
First of all, 12 of 22 for two TDs.
7 rushes, 45 yards. I'm not impressed, dude. I'm looking at these big games. He had one against USC, I'll give you that. But so far,
Check Ohio.
looking
check
0
Ohio
of
State,
2
check
right now.
Michigan.
Looking 0 of 2
What?
right now. Let's see what
No,
Colorado.
No, 2004. You looked at a loss. You looked at 2004.
No, this is 2005 against Tech. Y'all won that game. Y'all won 52-17, and Young didn't do jack squat. All the points in the world.
No, you're picking and choosing now, Nick.
Just going down
Picking
the
and
list.
choosing.
Okay,
Picking and choosing.
that Ohio State game. I'm just pulling these at random. I didn't look these up.
Yeah, check out the game winner. Game winner. Drive.
Okay, here we go.
That
Against Ohio State, 18 of 29, 62%, 270 yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions.
Game-winning touchdown drive.
20 rushes for 76 yards, no TDs on the ground. That's not that's not impressive in terms of like being
it's
big
against
game.
the number 4 team, first of all, and he has the game-winning touchdown. That's why I say you have to look at stuff other than those because he led the team for a win. Ohio State was a juggernaut back then.
That is such a weak argument. It's like
that's Ohio State right after they played Miami.
You remember that high school? Game where I said this guy's gonna hit the game-winning shot? He hadn't scored a single point until then, and he hits the half-court shot to win it. Now, who is more responsible for the win? Him or the guy who scored 24 points and played better defense?
Vince Young is both of those guys in this scenario.
Not in the Ohio State game. He was not that good.
He's the only guy. Yeah, he's the main guy on offense, and he leads the game-winning drive.
The main guy on offense who's not doing that well. Like, because you're the quarterback by default doesn't, like, mean you're good. It's not impressive.
But he's not, like, you don't know, because one could be a tip pass. That's why I say you got to watch it. Because literally watching those, it's like Vince Young was if the team got down, it's like Vince Young's got it, dude.
But you could say that about Manziel too. Like you're kind of throwing a bunch of abstract what ifs.
Those were juggernaut Ohio State teams, by the way. Those were right after playing Miami,
and he didn't do
winning
that
the championship. He led the game-winning drive.
Yeah, but your argument earlier was like Manziel's not doing good. Like Young, so far from what I've seen against the USC game, very impressive. Even though Manziel still had a higher QB rating against Bama, a better defense, but. It just, like...
Different years, it doesn't...
So, in 2005, Ohio State, not impressed. Texas Tech, not impressed. Let's see Colorado.
Oh, this is a complete ass whooping, and they had to pull him.
He finally has a good game. 25-29, 86%, 336. Finally.
Against Michigan, Vince Young, 16 of 28, 180 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception, rushing 21 for 192, 4 touchdowns.
So, I mean, he's definitely not a better passer at this point. That's not impressive. Like, rushing yards, again, that's nice. I mean, but Manziel, I would still say, is a better runner. Just looking at his averages and what he did.
It's not like, so you have Jamal Charles, but the Aggies had Christine Michaels taken first or second round? They had a NFL running back, and why is Texas's offense number 1? And I don't know if the Aggies were number 1.
No, we weren't, because we didn't have the same team all the way around that you did.
But you had the better receiver. Like,
dude, you guys had probably better offensive linemen. Again, you still had a nice.
Jokel, y'all had y'all had higher picks on the O-line. Jokel and Jake Matthews.
Just that one, I don't know. I have to go back and look. But the bottom line is you had 24, 26 NFL players to our 14. There's no getting around that. Like, there's no getting around that whatsoever.
But you can't just say that that's why he didn't win games.
Nothing is like a magic bullet. I'm just painting the picture that Vince Young easily had better talent around him.
No way.
The recruiting classes prove it. The NFL draft proves it. You're done? All right. Yeah, I'll put the poll up whenever we're done. All right, good
debate, sir.
Yeah, good debate. I enjoyed it.